moments in life when someone chooses you, kind of like we did today in our children's message. And some of those moments you never forget. Maybe it was a teacher who saw something in you before you saw it in yourself. Maybe it was a coach putting you in the game when you didn't really perform all that well. Or a friend who stayed by your side when others tended to drift away. I think most of us can trace back in our memories some of those people, and I'm going to invite you now to think about who, maybe it was when you were a young person especially, someone in your life who this speaks to, and then shout it out. I'm going to say my Girl Scout leader, Christy. Barbara. Who over here?
I'll say my first grade teacher, Mrs. Slater.
Your teacher, Mrs. Slater, who's sitting right behind you and watching your every move. How about others?
My cousin Jeannie.
Cousin Jeannie.
My college roommate Bonnie.
College roommate Bonnie.
My music teacher, Mrs. Boyd.
Music teacher, Mrs. Voigt.
Jim Gonzi.
Jim Gonzi. I invite you to think about those folks this morning as we hear some more of this story, and also as you travel through the week. Those memories are strong, and if we think really hard, sometimes it's easy to think. If we think really hard, there are moments when folks came into our lives and crossed our paths, even for a moment, even for a week, a time, an event, and somehow they changed our lives. We can trace our confidence, our courage, maybe a sense of worth back to those people. Someone who showed up and said in one way or another, "You matter." And those moments stay with us. They shape us and they become part of our story. And they begin to tell us something about who we are. That's the kind of moment we hear in today's gospel. Jesus comes to the Jordan River as a person stepping into the water with everyone else. John notices him and is a bit confused. And if you remember, John and Jesus are cousins, and so they've grown up together and they know each other. And John has been pointing to the one who will come, and he knows it is Jesus. So something about this just doesn't feel right to him. Jesus doesn't need this. He doesn't need to prove anything. And yet he steps into the water anyway, choosing to stand alongside ordinary people who are longing for change and forgiveness and new life. And as he emerges from the water, something very profound, something very personal happens. A voice from the heavens cracks through and speaks to everyone saying, "This is my son, my beloved." Before anything else is said about Jesus, God says, "You are loved. You are mine. You belong." That moment at the beginning of Jesus' ministry matters because it tells us something important about how God works. God doesn't hold back love until the mission is complete. Love comes first. Identity comes first. Belonging comes first. John the Baptizer at the river has been calling people to change, especially those in power who say many of the right things but neglect to live those right things out in their own lives. And John's been challenging the systems that protect themselves, the people who raise themselves up, putting themselves above the people they are supposed to be caring for. And when Jesus steps into the river, he aligns himself with that call. He chooses humility and grace and mercy over status. He chooses God's ways over the ways of the power that's centered in Jerusalem. Jesus chooses to care for his flock, seeking those who are lost and grieving those who have turned away from God. We live in a world that constantly tells us what our worth is, that we must earn it in some way, but God's love tells us everything we need to know about our worth. Our human relationships can feel transactional. Love becomes something we chase instead of something received, but God chooses us freely and wholly and unconditionally. A few years ago, I was the Christian education director and youth person at Brunswick United Methodist Church. And while I was working there, I had the opportunity to choose to become a mentor to an elementary school kid who teachers had identified as needing a little extra. It's a program called Kids Hope USA. Hope partners with local churches and elementary schools, put them together on a one-to-one mentoring for children. And volunteers commit to 1 hour a week, every single week during the school year, either tutoring, playing games, just being present with those kids, and that is the goal, to be there every week, providing consistency and relationship to kids who might otherwise not have that in their home life. Over 2 years, along with many of my other friends, church volunteers, I met weekly for an hour with these kids. And 1 hour doesn't seem like a lot, but it does add up. We read together, we played games, we talked about school, about life, and whatever was on their mind that day. And some weeks were light and easy, and some, they were a little bit heavier. Some felt ordinary and some felt extraordinary. But the most important part was simply showing up again and again, letting them know that someone had chosen to be there with them. And then I was surprised. When I went into Kids Hope, I was thinking I was choosing to give something. But what I learned is that choosing someone also changed me. Those boys taught me just as much as I offered them, and they reminded me how deeply we all need to be chosen, how we all need to feel seen, how powerful it is when someone keeps showing up, how much being chosen can shape our lives. That experience helped me to understand my baptism in a new and deeper way. Because baptism is God choosing us. Not because we earned it, not because we've proven ourselves, but because love always comes first. Baptism says you belong. And then it invites us to live like we belong. Like that belonging is real, not just for ourselves, but for everyone else around us. In the Reformed tradition, we have this practice of remembering our baptism, and I don't remember mine. I was an infant, maybe 6 months old. There are others here today who were baptized later in life, and they do remember their own baptism. And that remembering is important. And yet the most important part of that is remembering that our baptism is through the baptism of Jesus. It is remembered as a promise that God made to us. It's rooted in Jesus' baptism, and every time we remember our baptism, we are remembering His. We are remembering that Jesus stepped into the water first, that He stood where we stand, and He was named beloved before anything else happened. When we remember our baptism, we are remembering that we belong to that very same story. The same Spirit who descended on Jesus still moves among us. The same voice that spoke love over him continues to speak love over us. Remembering our baptism brings us back not to a memory, but most importantly to an identity of who we are and whose we are. And then because we have that belonging, because we are chosen, we are now asked to be sent out into the world. We are welcomed into Christ's body and then called to live out that love beyond these walls, to show up, to stand with others, to choose relationship over distance, humility over power, compassion over comfort. Now I want you to think back to maybe those people you had brought to your mind at the beginning. The teacher who noticed you when you felt invisible. The coach who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. The relative, the scout leader, that neighbor, or someone on the job who made all the difference in your life, or maybe just in that moment. No matter the person or the memory, it's that someone chose to invest in you. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because someone chooses us like that, it changes how we move through the world. We start to believe that we do matter. We take risks we might not have taken before. We imagine a future we couldn't see on our own. And we remember that we are beloved before anything else. We become more willing to show up for people who need to be chosen again and again, especially those who have been overlooked, that have been forgotten, who we've pushed out, who have made errors, that we send to the fringes. We choose them again and again. So I call on you and to myself that as we leave this place today and we head back to our homes and our lunch places beyond these walls, to a world that will keep telling us who it thinks we should be. The water of baptism tells us the truth. That we are beloved, we are chosen by God, we are important, we matter, and Jesus would have come for each one of us if it was only one. From that place of deep love, we are sent to choose others, to show up, and to take part in God's work of making all things new again. Beloved, you are chosen. Amen.